When a hungry beggar approaches the opulent cafe owner, the owner does something reprehensible to ridicule the beggar for asking for leftovers. The cruel owner receives a swift and powerful blow from karma a day later. The busy city's beating heart was Mr. Rupert's cafe. It was the gathering place where people would go to enjoy a warm cup of coffee, freshly made pastries, mouth-watering cinnamon rolls, and the kind grin of its owner. It was tucked away in the center of the town square. Thanks to his late father's perseverance and commitment, what began as a little food truck business when Mr. Rupert was 5 years old eventually became the buzz of the town. After his father's passing, Mr. Rupert came into possession of the growing company. He gave everything he had to make this restaurant a success. But as time went on, something in him changed. He lost sight of his own modest beginnings as a result of the success of his firm, which gave him a sense of entitlement and superiority. Mr. Rupert lost his sense of equality with others around him. He began to look down on those beneath him, particularly the impoverished. In order to maintain an edge over the competition, his business was strictly not open to charitable organizations. Therefore, one day, as Mr. Rupert stood in the middle of his restaurant, he was concerned about the old technology and the small area. If he wanted to stay competitive and draw in new clients, he understood he had to alter. So he signed the paperwork to mortgage his property without giving it much thought, and then spent all of his funds on new equipment and expanding the restaurant. At last my contemporary cafe is open. When Mr. Rupert's dream came true, he sighed and grinned heartily from ear to ear. Mr. Rupert was very excited and proud as the contractors started knocking down walls and setting up new high-tech equipment. He was so eager to advance his company that he was confident nothing would stand in his way at the moment or in the future. As the days went by, more contented customers began to frequent Mr. Rupert's coffee shop. On a busy afternoon, he smiled. That's what success tastes like, as he checked on his visitors. Bonjour, I hope you have a good day. As he greeted a French family who frequently visited his restaurant, Mr. Rupert tipped his hat. The moment he turned back to look at the dinner menu, a homeless man entered with filthy, torn clothing and a sunken face. "Excuse me, sir," the man said as he walked up to Mr. Rupert at the counter. "Please, could you spare some food?" Mr. Rupert glared as he gave the man a wide-eyed stare. "Slow down! How did you get in? Security! Security!" "Sir, I'm starving. Would you kindly offer me something to eat? Maybe some leftovers?" "I'm not in charge of this charity. I don't contribute to begging people. You bum, leave my cafe now." The man held his grumbling stomach and looked down, disheartened, before staring back into Mr. Rupert's eyes. "Excuse me, sir, I'm famished. My last meal was days ago. Anything you can spare, I'll take it. Please give me something to eat, even if it's stale." After rolling his eyes and backing away, Mr. Rupert pinched his nose in distaste and motioned for a servant to deliver the leftovers. When the impoverished man observed Mr. Rupert gather the day's leftover burgers, sandwiches, donuts, and pastries in a green garbage bag, his eyes lit up with hope. The smell of the meal was too much for the hungry man to refuse, and his mouth began to moisten. His stomach was grumbling loudly, and he couldn't wait to dive into the dinner. However, Mr. Rupert turned around and moved toward the trash can as the man raised his frail hands to take the bag of food out of the bag. "There you are, fool. All the leftovers are yours to keep from the garbage." The man swallowed in disappointment as Mr. Rupert threw the bag in the bin and closed it, tauntingly yelling, "Now get out!" The hungry man left the coffee shop with a hungover look on his face and went in search of nourishment elsewhere. Mr. Rupert felt a sense of pride rush over him as he turned around from the entrance and adjusted his ties. "That ought to show that tramp his place and teach him a lesson. How dare he enter my restaurant, unclean bum! You too. If another hobo walks into my cafe, I'll fire you," he yelled at the guards. The door abruptly burst open later that evening as Mr. Rupert was dozing off at his desk after reviewing some paperwork. When he noticed a waitress panting in the doorway, he was alarmed. "Maria, what on earth are you doing in here acting this way?" Rupert shouted. "I'm busy, can't you see that? Moreover, how dare you walk into my office without first knocking?" There's been a... Mr. Rupert. Now what is it? Wait, don't waste my time. What is that odd odor? Did the chefs burn something in the kitchen again? I'll deduct it from their pay, for them to pay. The waitress said, "Mr. Rupert," gasping for air and coughing with horror in her eyes. "The dining room has caught fire. We have to leave." "A fire? Why is my restaurant on fire?" "Sir, yes, you need to leave this place immediately." As soon as Mr. Rupert smelled the burning wood, his heart began to accelerate. He leaped from his chair and dashed for the safe. "My money! No, not at all, my money!" However, 2 firefighters stormed in and dragged Mr. Rupert from the smoke-filled space before he could unlock the safe. "Sir, we must leave. The entire structure is ablaze. Just be cooperative." Mr. Rupert observed flames climbing up the walls and dense smoke rising to the ceiling as they made their way out of the blazing structure. Mr. Rupert gazed helplessly at the raging flames engulfing his favorite cafe. Everything vanished in a flash. Everything in the safe, the expensive machinery, imported furniture, and cash was burned to ashes. The question is, how did this happen? He marched over to his workers. "Oh my God, how did this happen? Someone please explain to me how my cafe caught fire." Mr. Rupert observed the firefighters as they toiled to extinguish the flames. His once bustling coffee business was reduced to charred wreckage within a few hours. He collapsed onto a nearby bench as he watched the hard work he had put into his life burn to embers. "Mr. Rupert, we apologize. We apologize for the inconvenience. It was a short circuit that went unnoticed." "Everybody, please don't bother me. Just leave now." With his head resting on his hands after collapsing, Mr. Rupert ultimately dozed off on a seat outside a nearby store while he was penniless and alone. The following morning, Mr. Rupert awoke to the sun's warm rays stroking his chilled body. When his stomach began to growl, he reached into his coat pocket to see whether he had any cash on hand to buy food, but it was vacant. Uncertain of what to inquire, Mr. Rupert took a long breath and then stood up and walked for the nearby bakery. He paused, feeling embarrassed, and cleared his throat as he approached the counter. "Pardon me, would you kindly assist me?" "Mr. Russell, are you there? Why are you at our small bakery? I've heard that your cafe burned down yesterday. Are things in order?" the manager said. "Please provide me with something to eat. I'm famished. I'm in a terribly bad situation right now because I lost everything last night in the fire tragedy. Also, I'm unable to pay you." The manager scowled as she surveyed the glass racks. "All right, here are the donuts and leftover hamburgers from last night. We had just about finished throwing them. However, don't anticipate us to do this every day." As Mr. Rupert marched out of the bakery with a bag of leftovers, those words struck him like a ton of bricks. He found it hard to think that such a day would ever come. He saw the homeless man he'd ejected from his coffee shop the day before as he was about to consume another burger. He snatched his food bag and sprinted away. "Hey, pardon me. Hey, hold on." The homeless man was astounded to see Mr. Rupert coming toward him with a broad, happy smile. "I apologize for failing to assist you yesterday. I'm not sure how to put this, but today I'm also in a difficult situation. Do you want to share my breakfast with me?" The only sound made by the 2 men as they ate was the sound of their food being chewed. "I appreciate this." The destitute man identified himself as Freddy and stated, "I'll never forget your assistance. I once operated a grocery store in a nearby city. I believed I didn't need anything else because I was so wealthy. When the needy came to me, I never helped them and would shoo them away from my shop. But destiny dragged me outside. To pay off my obligations, I sold my house and everything else I owned. My wealthy friends and family members turned away from me. Following that, nothing was the same again." Mr. Rupert put his hand on Freddy's shoulder and murmured, "I'm sorry to hear that, Freddy. I shouldn't have rejected you in that manner yesterday. I apologize for it." When Mr. Rupert watched his life crumble over the following few days, leaving him without a house, the 2 men made the decision to stick together, and Freddy took him to the homeless shelter. I'm aware that the first few months might be difficult here. When I initially arrived, it was for me, but I developed coping mechanisms. I anticipate you settling in here shortly." Mr. Rupert sighed loudly as he lamented the shelter's miserable living circumstances. He had to live and share a room with the underprivileged folks he had earlier detested. He understood that he would have to sleep on a bunk bed and stand in line to use the restroom. He detested his existence, but he had no other option. The following morning, Mr. Rupert unexpectedly rushed into the shelter with his eyes still wet. "You won't believe what just happened, Freddy." "Mr. Rupert, what's happening? Since the morning, where have you been? All over I was looking for you." "Freddy, I've been out there trying to make things happen. And what about that? I spoke with the proprietor of a fancy eatery down the road, and he has decided to hire both of us." "A job? Are you serious? What?" "Seriously, pal. He agreed to give us another try after I told him about our experience. Get ready and hurry, since we start today." Freddy became interested when the man left the shelter after changing into their work clothing. "I've been looking for work, but I've never been successful. Man, how did you accomplish this in just one day?" The gentleman laughed. "I just focused on it, buddy. I had to fight for a fair agreement for both of us, but in the end, I succeeded. That should help us recover all of the missing items. However, it will take a long time and a ton of effort. Do you agree with me on this?" As time passed, Mr. Rupert and Freddy gave their best in their new roles as a janitor and a dishwasher in the restaurant. Their hard work paid off well several months later when they were promoted to chef and manager of the same outlet. Mr. Rupert paid off his debts, and soon he moved from the homeless shelter to a rented apartment with his friend Freddy. One day, while discussing some menu changes, the diner's owner approached them with a serious expression on his face. "Guys, I've been thinking about how we can give back to the community and help the needy, but I'm not sure how." Mr. Rupert and Freddy exchanged a curious look. "Why don't we distribute leftovers on a food truck at the end of this lane instead of throwing them away? And that way, we grab ourselves a chance to help the homeless and the needy," Mr. Rupert proposed. "That's a fantastic idea, Mr. Rupert. Let's do this," exclaimed the owner. And so, over the next few weeks, Mr. Rupert and Freddy joined forces with the restaurant owner to initiate their project, Leftover Love, Free Meals on Wheels. "This is just the beginning," said Mr. Rupert as they watched a bunch of happy homeless diners enjoying their meals outside their food truck. "We have to do so much more to help such people." "Yeah, pal, there's more to go, 'cause they deserve better. At least one full meal a day," sighed Freddy.